Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, a bit of a pivot from the usual.
Right. Usually we're tearing apart business trends or history books, but today we are tuning in to a frequency that is equal parts melody and medicine. We are looking at a track called Open Air by the artist Ti-Fi.
And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait, did I click on a music review deep dive by mistake?
Stick with us.
Right, stick with us. Because while this is a track with a great hook and some serious piano work, our research stack today suggests it's actually something else entirely. It's a documented case study of a massive psychological shift.
Exactly. We aren't here to rate the bridge or, critique the mixing, though, spoiler alert, it is pretty great.
It really is.
But we have a stack of notes here that breaks down the lyrics and the composition entirely through the lens of clinical psychology.
Which is such a fascinating way to look at music.
It is. We're looking at concepts like the clinical gaze, the mechanics of radical acceptance, and the very specific ways language can either trap us in a mental health crisis or set us free.
It's basically a look at the architecture of healing. The premise we're working with today is that Open Air documents a journey. It starts with the crushing weight of clinical labels, what we would call the medical model, and it moves toward the freedom of authentic human connection.
Yeah.
It's a piano-driven anthem, sure, but beneath the keys, it's a roadmap for recovery.
So our mission today is to just strip down the layers of this song. We want to understand how a shift in how we listen and the specific words we use can completely transform mental health.
Let's jump right into that first verse.
Let's do it. The song opens with this incredibly vivid, almost claustrophobic image. The lyric is, "I used to walk around with a dictionary in my hand trying to find a definition you would understand."
That imagery is just so potent right out of the gate.
It hit me immediately because it's so relatable. It reminds me of that 3.0 a.m. doom scroll on WebMD.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Or scrolling through psychology forums on Reddit. When you're going through something internal, something really messy, you have this desperate, burning need to find the right words to explain the pain.
You feel like you could just define it.
Yes. If you can just find the entry in the dictionary, maybe it stops hurting. Or at least people stop looking at you like you're an alien.
Precisely. And that hunger you're describing, that leads us to the first major psychological concept the source material highlights today, which is the clinical gaze.
The clinical gaze, which sounds like a sci-fi thriller, honestly. What does that actually mean in this context?
So the clinical gaze is a term often associated with the philosopher Michel Foucault, but in the context of these notes, it refers to a specific way of viewing human suffering. It's that hunger for a diagnosis we were just talking about.
Right.
When we're in the early stages of mental health struggles, we often think a precise clinical term is the holy grail. We think, if I can just hand you a slip of paper that says I have X disorder, then the gap between us will close. You'll finally get it.
It's like we're trying to hand someone a map so they can find us. We just want a shorthand for all the chaos in our heads.
Exactly. We want legitimacy. We think the label makes the pain real, but the song suggests that this dictionary isn't actually helpful. In fact, it seems to backfire.
Yeah, because the next line says, "I was waiting for the label, waiting for the sting of a word that clipped the feathers right off of my wing."
That is visceral.
Visceral. Clipped the feathers. That line stopped me in my tracks. It implies that the definition actually took something away. It didn't add understanding, it subtracted freedom.
It's a really stark warning about how labels can become cages. This is the danger of what we call diagnostic overshadowing or over-identification.
How does the source material frame that?
It puts it really well. It says when you rely too heavily on the dictionary, you risk reducing yourself to a cluster of symptoms. You stop being a complex human being with a life and a history and a personality, and you just become a problem to be solved.
I see. So if I introduce myself as the depressed guy or the anxious person, I've sort of already decided how the story ends. I've limited my own agency.
You have. And that's the sting of a word the lyrics mention. It's the dictionary being weaponized against your own mind. It limits what you think you're capable of. You're not flying anymore, you're being treated.
You're a patient, not a person.
Right. Now, to be clear, the medical model definitely has its place. Diagnoses are vital for treatment plans and insurance and getting the right medication.
Sure, absolutely.
But what Ti-Fi is critiquing here is when the terminology strips away the humanity, when the map completely replaces the territory.
It's like looking at a sunset and only describing the wavelengths of light. You entirely miss the actual sunset.
That is a perfect analogy. You miss the experience of it.
So the narrator is stuck in this clinical trap, holding this heavy dictionary, waiting for someone to define them. But then we get the turning point. And honestly, this is the pivot that the whole song rests on.
The shift is so clear here.
The line is, but then you pulled up a chair and you looked me in the eye. You didn't try to diagnose. You didn't try to pry.
This is where the song pivots from isolation to connection. And psych-wise, we are entering the territory of Carl Rogers.
Carl Rogers! He's one of the heavy hitters in humanistic psychology, right?
The heaviest. Rogers pioneered the concept of unconditional positive regard.
Which is a fancy way of saying what exactly?
Basically, it's the practice of offering total acceptance and support to a person exactly as they are, without judgment and without conditions.
Wow.
It sounds simple, but think about how rare that actually is in our daily lives. Usually, our support is highly conditional. I'll support you if you take my advice. Or, I'll support you if you stop acting like this.
That's so true. We are always trying to fix people. We listen for about 10 seconds and then we jump right in with, you know what you should do.
Right, the unsolicited advice.
But the lyric emphasizes the physical action. Pulling up a chair, I love that visual. It feels so much less intimidating than, say, lying on a couch while someone with a clipboard analyzes you from across the room.
That's the key right there, leveling the power dynamic. In a clinical setting, there is often a hierarchy. The healthy doctor looks down on the broken patient. When someone pulls up a chair, they are physically lowering themselves to your level. They were sitting with you.
They're a peer in that moment.
Exactly. And notice the specific question the friend asks in the song. It's not, what are your symptoms?
Right. The lyric is, you ask me, what's it like inside your head today?
That distinction is crucial. Think about the difference between that and a medical question. If I ask, did you take your meds, or rate your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm asking for a report. I'm asking for data points to plot on a graph.
It's an audit. You're auditing my brain.
Exactly. It's an audit of your functionality. But asking what's it like inside your head, that invites lived experience. It trades clinical assessment for genuine curiosity.
It's less about the label and more about the texture of the feeling.
It's asking for the texture of the experience, not the definition of it. It creates a space where literally any answer is the right answer.
And the result in the song is immediate. The lyrics say, and for the first time in forever, I knew just what to say. It's like, because they were treated as a human and not a patient, the words just unlocked.
That is the power of the Rogers approach. When we stop trying to diagnose our friends and just witness them, we create safety. We lower their cortisol. And in that safety, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for language and reasoning, comes back online.
And communication just flows.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the chorus. And reading through the musical composition notes here, this is where the track really shifts gears. Up until now, it's been intimate, just that piano and vocal.
But now it builds.
Yeah, we got driving drums kicking in, layered guitars swelling up. It's representing this massive emotional release.
It mirrors the psychological breakthrough. The energy is moving outward. The lyrics in the chorus are, meet me where I am, not where I should be.
Not where I should be. That hits home. I feel like we spend our whole lives worrying about where we should be. I should be happier. I should be more productive. I should be over this by now.
It's that internal scoreboard we all carry around.
Yes, exactly.
That is the central struggle for so many people, the tyranny of the shoulds. And this connects directly to a concept from dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, called radical acceptance.
Okay, let's unpack this, because radical acceptance is one of those terms that gets thrown around on Instagram a lot. Does that mean just giving up? Like, well, everything is terrible, I guess we'll just lay here.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That is the biggest misconception about this concept. Radical acceptance doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean you like the situation. It doesn't mean you think the situation is fair.
Okay.
It means accepting reality completely in the present moment, without fighting it or throwing a tantrum that it isn't different.
So it's really about stopping the denial.
It's about stopping the suffering that comes from refusing to accept facts. The source material discusses the immense societal pressure to get better. We feel this intense need to produce a smile, to be productive, to bounce back immediately after a trauma.
The toxic environment of shame, as the notes call it. If you aren't getting better fast enough, you feel like you're failing at recovery. You're basically flunking being okay.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And that shame acts like a secondary infection. You have the original pain, let's say the depression, and then you have the shame about having the depression.
Which just makes everything heavy.
Right. Radical acceptance cuts off that secondary infection. So when the lyric says, "Meet me where I am," it's a plea to stop the pressure to be somewhere else.
That makes the metaphor of open air in the song make a lot more sense. It isn't about suddenly being ecstatic and jumping for joy. It's about the absence of that crushing weight. It's about the suffocation stopping.
I like how the notes phrase it. Healing isn't always instant happiness. Sometimes it's just the ground feeling steady and secure.
That's a much more realistic goal, isn't it?
It is. If you're drowning, you don't need a party boat. You just need solid ground. You need the air to breathe. You need to know that you aren't fighting the current anymore. That is what acceptance provides, a place to stand.
Now, speaking of things that don't help, the second verse goes after a very specific modern annoyance. The narrator admits, "I told you I was struggling, I told you I was down," and then mentions waiting for the good vibes only crowd to show up.
Oh, the good vibes only trap. We see this everywhere now. It's on T-shirts, coffee mugs, office walls. It's become this cultural mantra.
The lyric tackles it head on, though. It says, "But you didn't offer platitudes to tell me it's a choice." That idea that happiness is just a choice you make, why is that so damaging? Because on the surface, it sounds empowering. Like, just choose to be happy.
It sounds empowering to the person saying it, but to the person hearing it, it's incredibly invalidating. If you tell someone in the depths of clinical depression to just choose happiness, you are essentially telling them that their pain is a failure of will. You're implying that if they were just a little stronger or a little smarter, they wouldn't feel this way.
It turns their suffering into a character flaw. Like they just aren't trying hard enough to smile.
Precisely. You're forcing them to perform wellness for your comfort.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. It tells the person that their actual feelings, their sadness, their anger, their grief, are unacceptable in this space. It says, "I only want the shiny version of you. Leave the messy version at the door."
So what's the alternative then? Because we all want our friends to feel better. We don't want them to suffer. The song offers a solution here. It says the friend in the track validated every fire and shadow in the light.
Validation. It is the mechanism of change. And the notes make an important distinction here. Validation doesn't mean agreeing with distorted thoughts. It doesn't mean saying, "Yes, you're right, everything is hopeless and you should just give up."
Right, because that would be co-ruminating. That's just two people spiraling together.
Exactly. Validation means acknowledging that the pain is real. And it makes sense given what the person is going through. It's saying, "I see that you are in pain, and I understand why you feel that way. It makes sense that you're sad."
It's the fire and shadow, acknowledging the ugly parts.
Right. And here is the paradox that the expert source highlights. It is only when we are allowed to sit in the dark, to acknowledge the fire and the shadow without trying to rush out of it, that the future starts looking bright.
That is so counterintuitive, though. As humans, we're fixers. If I see a friend crying, my instinct is to hand them a tissue and say, "It's going to be okay, here's a solution." We want to turn the lights on immediately.
We do. We are deeply uncomfortable with pain. We are uncomfortable with ambiguity. But holding space, sitting in the quiet without trying to fix it, is incredibly difficult. We fidget. We offer solutions. We say, "Have you tried yoga? Have you tried keto? Have you tried meditating?"
Right, throwing everything at the wall.
But the friend in open air just listens. And that lack of pressure is actually what allows the narrator to move forward.
Because they don't have to defend their pain anymore. They can just feel it and let it pass.
Exactly.
And moving forward is exactly what happens in the bridge of the song. The notes describe this as a soaring, high-energy rock climax with cinematic orchestral swells. The vocals go into this belt-heavy range. It sounds epic. You can hear the confidence returning in the music itself.
The energy matches the internal shifts perfectly.
Yeah.
We are moving from connection to reclamation. This isn't just about feeling better. It's about taking charge.
The lyrics here are so powerful. Call me a survivor, call me a warrior. I see person first to claim it as my own.
This is self-determination in action. Trauma and severe mental illness often strip away a person's sense of control. You feel like a passenger in your own body. You feel like things are being done to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, the healthcare system can replicate that by making the doctor the expert on your life and you just the subject.
So when the narrator starts saying, "Call me a survivor," they are taking the pen back.
Exactly. They are reauthoring the self. This ties into narrative therapy. Notice the mention of person-first language in the lyrics.
I see person first.
Right. It's the difference between saying, "I am a depressive," which defines your whole being by the illness,
Yeah.
versus "I am a person experiencing depression," or "I am a survivor."
Or I am a warrior. That's a choice.
It's a choice made possible by safety. The lyrics say, you respect the boundary, you respect the tone, Because the friend established safety back in the first verse, the narrator now feels empowered to say, you know what? I'm not broken. I'm a survivor.
And the line that follows, you put the power back in my hands, that's huge. It wasn't the meds or the dictionary that gave the power back. It was the dynamic of the relationship.
It's the shift from passive to active. When you are diagnosed by a dictionary, you are passive. You are a label. When you claim it as your own, you are active. You are the protagonist of the story again.
I love that.
The song is showing us that recovery isn't just about symptom reduction. It's about agency. It's about deciding who you are.
That is such a powerful distinction. It's not just about not being sick. It's about being you again.
Precisely. And that's why the song ends on such a high note. It's the sound of someone stepping out of a small room into the open air.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out? We've got this incredible track, Open Air by Ti-Fi. We've gone from the crushing weight of the dictionary, that desperate search for a label, to the freedom of the open air.
I think the core finding here, looking at all these sources, is that beneath the modalities, the medications, and the theories, the core engine of recovery is human connection.
It's simpler than we think, isn't it? We overcomplicate it with jargon. We think we need a PhD to help a friend.
It is simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. It requires us to unlearn a lot of habits. We have to unlearn the urge to fix. We have to unlearn the reliance on jargon. We have to unlearn our own discomfort with silence. The song argues that the most powerful tool we have isn't a prescription pad, it's curiosity.
Trading judgment for a little curiosity. That's the line that sticks with me. It feels like a life philosophy, not just a lyric.
It is. It's about asking that honest question. What's it like inside your head? And then doing the hardest thing in the world, which is just listening to the answer, not listening to respond, not listening to diagnose, just listening.
And letting the heavy doors stay open.
Precisely.
This has been such a refreshing look at how music can articulate these complex psychological struggles better than a textbook sometimes. I feel like we often separate art and science, but here they are doing the exact same work.
Absolutely. Art often reaches places that analysis can't, but when you combine them, like we did today, you get a really clear picture of what healing looks like. It's not a straight line, and it's not a definition in a book, it's a conversation.
So here is our challenge to you, the listener, based on the philosophy of open air. The next time a friend or a loved one is struggling, catch yourself.
Right. Catch the urge to diagnose. Catch the urge to offer a platitude or tell them to look on the bright side. Catch the urge to be the expert.
And instead just pull up a chair, ask them what it's like inside their head, and just let them breathe.
Find that open air together.
And as you do, consider this thought to take with you. If holding space and actively listening without judgment can lower cortisol and bring someone's prefrontal cortex back online, what if our silence is actually doing more than just showing support? What if pulling up a chair and truly listening actually begins rewiring their neural pathways in real time?
That is a profound thing to think about, that our presence could be a physical catalyst for someone else's healing.
Something to mull over until next time. Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care.